Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Joint Contact and NNPCF Parent Carer Forum Conference. I hope you all managed to keep safe from the weekend storms and blizzards, and it was certainly a wild weekend. It feels a little bit like deja vu from last year, being here again virtually. I think we thought that last year couldn't possibly be repeated. I think it has been another year to remember for all the wrong reasons. And although I suppose it wasn't quite as challenging or disruptive as 2020, life has continued to be and continues to be very different from how we've known it before. And there's still a lot of uncertainty about the immediate future. But having said that, life continues and we make the best of the situations we find ourselves in. And in spite of the recent challenges, there have been some positives, although sometimes you have to look a little harder or dig a bit deeper to find them. One positive is that we've been able to reach a lot more of you via the conference. It was about 1,700 last year over both parts, rather than the 200 or so that we reach when we meet face to face. And this year, I think we've got, more than 729 or around 730 registrations across the week. And we're really looking forward to engaging with everyone who attends, although we acknowledge it's not quite the same as being in the same room as each other or sitting around the table or all that networking that meeting face to face brings. I think last year we thought the virtual conference would be a one-off, and by now we would be back to meeting in a room face to face and enjoy that networking. And it's just, it's great that we can reach more people, but I think it's not quite the same. So the pandemic is far from over. We don't quite know what winter will bring, and it might not be easy. But I just wanted to say that the work that you do with forums to ensure that your children, young people's needs are put on decision makers' agendas is ever more important during these tough times. And I wanted to thank everyone involved in Parent Carer Forums for the relentless effort that you put in on a daily basis to improve things for others. The last almost 2 years now have seen forums stretch beyond the limit. Capacity is at its lowest, yet you're still here, and somehow forums overall memberships increased, especially your virtual memberships and social media reach. And yes, unfortunately, some forums did fall victim to COVID as members simply couldn't continue or steering groups dwindled. And we must acknowledge all of those forums who are no longer functional. But on the whole, forums continue to have an impact during 2021, especially in regard to local measures and national policies relating to COVID response. Through your efforts and through the national representation of your experiences by the NNPCF, policymakers listened and you made a difference. So this week, Mrunal, could you move on to the next slide, please? Onto the timetable. We have a variety of sessions for you to join. So please do register for any of the sessions you've not yet booked onto, and you will receive reminders for the sessions you booked onto, including registering ahead of the session on Zoom, which you all need to do before you enter the session. We'll have both the Secretary of State for Education and the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State, Children and Families Minister later in the week, with sessions on communication, alternative provision, national and regional health working, what's working and what needs to change with Christine Lenihan. We've got working with children and people's forums and a question and answer session with Susie Powell and Andre Imick from the Department of Education. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance for Susie and Andre. And last but not least, we're really excited to launch our long-awaited diversity inclusion toolkit at the conference finale on Wednesday evening, which aims to help forums to reach out further into their community with the confidence. And you'll find this hopefully later today on the news page of the Parent Carer Participation section of the website. We've also released our annual report in time for the conference, and that also will be on the news page from today and on how we support the forum's webpage. So please do tune in for the sessions that you can make it to live. And remember that we'll upload all of the sessions on our online learning events page for you to watch after the conference. We hope that everyone takes away something useful, and we'll see you again in March when we hope there'll be an update on the SEN review, and there'll also be the NNPCF AGM. So we hope for next year's conference, keeping everything crossed, that we'll finally see everyone in person again. So I'm now going to hand over to Amanda, Contact CEO, and Mrunal, Co-Chair of the NNPCF, to reflect on some of the highs and the lows of the year. So thank you all and enjoy the week.
Great, thank you, Carolyn, and hello, everybody. There's snow on the ground where I am, and I'm wondering what the weather's like with you. It's probably a good job we're not all trying to negotiate trains this morning. Obviously, the conference is online this year again, and as Carolyn says, lots of advantages to that. It's more accessible for you, and you can dip in and out of the sessions that interest you most. And of course, if you get bored, you can sort of wander off and do other things. But I hope that won't happen in the next 20 minutes. I hope we can keep your attention. And of course, I really miss the opportunity that conference usually presents to just have a bit of a natter and a catch up with you. So I hope to meet in person before too long. As Carolyn said, it's been another exceptional year. All credit to you for the lengths that you've gone to, not only to support your own families through the pandemic, but to find the space and the energy to reach out and support and work with others. It's remarkable, and I want to recognise and celebrate that. And at the same time, I guess if you take one thing from my slot, it's a reminder to you to take care of yourselves too. Burnout has always been an issue for forums and for voluntary roles in general, and I think particularly that's true in these challenging times. This movement is only as strong as you are. So it's in everyone's interests for you to look after your own well-being. So I'm going to start by drawing out a couple of the kind of key themes from the annual report that Carolyn mentioned. And we collect this report every year, and it gives that broader context on what forums have done over the year. You can read the whole report on the website. But I'm going to start off with this graph, and this is one I always sort of flick to first in the report. And what it shows is levels of participation that forums report across education, social care and health. And so looking at this graph, what it tells us, or what things I took from it, was that despite the pandemic, forums have reported an upturn in co-production from 2020 to 2021. Remain strong in education, and the levels of co-production, that's the purple bit, and participation, the pink bit, with health is still increasing, and that's really catching up now with education, which is great to see. It used to be, just a few years ago, it used to be a lot lower, so that's fantastic. We've also seen an increase in co-production in social care, but that is lower than the other two, and where more forums are not working with social care compared to those not working with health or education. And I was just reflecting on that, and I thought, you know, it's interesting because forums as a movement were established as an outcome of the Every Disabled Child Matters campaign, which also put a lot of money into short breaks and respite. So a lot of forums started off life working in co-producing in the world of social care. And obviously a decade on, the situation is very different, lots of budget pressures. I'm sure participation can be very challenging in that context. But I just wondered what your thoughts and experiences were, perhaps around why participation around social care is lower, or maybe some positive experiences that you've had in that space. So I wondered if you have thoughts, pop them in the chat, and then we'll come back to them at the end of these slides. So just moving on to the next slide, the other thing that the report picks up on is the levels of support that forums have provided to families. So this is going above and beyond the core participation function. But in such a crucial year, I thought it was important to pull out. Many forums doing great work supporting families, and the report takes a snapshot of that with some great examples across the country, from Brighton and Hove, Swindon, up to Telford and Wrekin, Darlington and Stockton are pulled out. And I think what some of those experiences show is that outreach and support for families has actually proved to be quite an effective way for forums to reach new and diverse families that perhaps they wouldn't have done otherwise. I was particularly struck by Sunderland, whose apparently membership increased by 1/3 off the back of their wellbeing pack they produced for parents. So I think that's really interestingly showing how the support and the participation sort of and can reinforce each other sometimes. And at Contact, we're really delighted to secure extra funding for forums to help with community support through our relationship with Pears Foundation. The Pears DCMS scheme delivered further 600,000 on top of the normal grants to both forums and rare condition support groups last year, and we're delighted that we've been able to continue with that level of additional grants this year. Okay, and then the final slide from the report, just I wanted to pick up on. This is really the most interesting page for me because it shows how forums are reaching out and engaging with seldom heard groups. And of course, engaging with different kinds of families across local communities has always been crucial to a forum's strength. The forum's role is to represent families in their area, so that by being inclusive and representative is really key, I think, to credibility in that role. But it is a challenge and it can be difficult. And forums told us that they very much share those aspirations, but in practice can sometimes feel a bit nervous about getting it wrong or using the wrong language and causing offence, or perhaps not having some of the practical know-how or tools that they need. So really delighted to be launching the Diversity Toolkit at this conference. I hope you'll be able to join that session. It's been developed in partnership with many of you, picking up on some of the great practice out there. It's a working document. I'm sure we'll be able to update it and revise, but I hope it provides some of that practical support that forums said that they find helpful. There was one particular point I just wanted to pick up on in relation to that, which is just that I understand that collecting data on who you're reaching is a really important first point in terms of this work. And I think we're aware that when GDPR came in, lots of forums then felt quite nervous about doing that data collection. So I just wanted to kind of remind everyone that you can still collect demographic data, and a particularly easy way to do it is to do anonymous surveys. And so I just wanted to encourage everyone to do that if you're not already, because it's a really good starting point for this piece of work. Also, just on the note around diversity, I'm really delighted to announce that we've just Contact just secured some funding from NHS England, which is born out of those terrible statistics on poorer health outcomes and higher morbidity for people with learning disabilities from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds. So the funding is to work with 15 forums to kind of help strengthen the work you're already doing around inclusion and diversity, focusing particularly on race. So we're going to send some information out on that and be in touch with you soon if you'd like to take part in that programme. But really delighted to have secured that funding, because tackling anti-racism and strengthening diversity is a really key focus for Contact and an area that I'm personally committed to. So I'm really glad to see it on the conference agenda this year. And then finally, I've run out of time, which I knew I would, so I've included some slides here on Contact's response to the pandemic, just outlining how we've expanded support for families over the year. The slides are on the website if you'd like to take a look. The message really is that we're really keen to work with you to support families in your area, so do have a conversation with us about how we can best work together to do that. And on to the next slide. The other area of Contact's pandemic response has been campaigning at a national level. As Contact, we've been very focused on vaccine access, and then recently we've just launched our Counting the Cost campaign, really focusing on how the pandemic has impacted families financially, and that will be a focus for us over the next year. As the Disabled Children's Partnership, which I chair, campaign has focused on COVID recovery and short breaks funding in particular. I'm not going to speak on this now, as Mrunal is going to cover the policy developments and NNPCF's fantastic work. So hopefully I can seamlessly transfer to him in a moment. What I would say is that whilst sometimes there are tensions between campaigning and participation approaches at a local level, but I think at a national level, they're very much sort of reinforcing, and we all really share the same ambitions. So to the last slide, as DCP, we're very focused on ensuring that family stories are heard and building political support for change and supporting the NNPCF's role in policy development. So I'm going to hand over to Mrunal now to share his reflections on the year and what's to come in terms of national policy. But for me, thank you for listening. All the very best from me to you, to your forum and your family for the winter break and for whatever the new year holds for you. Thank you.
So I'm Mrunal Sisodia. I'm one of the co-chairs of the NNPCF, and I'm also the East of England steering group representative. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the work that the NNPCF's been doing over the last year or so. Amanda touched on a lot of the themes, and I'm hopefully going to give you a little bit more colour in 10 minutes or so. So the first thing to say is it just doesn't get any easier, does it? You know, we thought last year was hard, this year's been hard as well. And we know that COVID has caused new harms and it's exacerbated existing harms. We know that that the system was at breaking point before COVID hit. You've told us very clearly of the challenges around children in mainstream schools accessing health service, accessing social care. COVID landed on top of that, on top of the system that was already at breaking point, and has further impacted the lives of children and young people with SEND. And we get that message so very clearly from our member forums, and the NNPCF, of course, is made up of parent carers ourselves, so we're living it as well. And what we're seeing and what we're experiencing is that, frankly, anger in the system, parental anger is definitely going up. And there's a lot of angry parents out there, and a lot of them have very good reason to be angry. And the flip side of that is that trust in the system is deteriorating. We're seeing that all the time, that fewer and fewer people really believe this system can deliver for them. And I think it's really important that we, both at the NNPCF and Contact, understand it, and we recognise that, because that's the backdrop. That's the backdrop to how where we're operating at the moment. But as both Carolyn and Amanda said, forums have again risen to the challenge. You've done a remarkable job over the last year, absolutely astounding, and I'm constantly humbled by the role that forums have played. You know, everything from moving online digitally to contacting and staying in touch with your families in different ways, to the wellness packs that Amanda mentioned. Through all of this, you've carried on highlighting the issues, representing your communities. And more than that, you've supported each other. Forums have reached out and helped one another through these difficult times, and you've supported the NNPCF. And most importantly, you've carried on being a mum, a dad, a grandparent, or a carer throughout of all of this. So it's not likely that we talk about forums as often as being superheroes, and I think you really are. At the start of this year, we identified 4 priorities. And what I want to do is just take a moment and just to share with you the work that we've been doing, and probably just as importantly, to look forward and share with you what we think is coming and the work that we're going to be doing around those 4 priorities. So they were the supporting the recovery from COVID. Well, yes, we might be recovering, but we might also be about to go into another wave of disruption. There's the NHS long-term plan. There's a lot of work that we've been doing around improving accountability in the SEND system. That's things like changing tribunals, and also things such as the local area inspection framework. So I'll update on that. And then lastly, but not least, is the SEND review. And tagged onto that, there's actually been a few other initiatives that we've engaged with that I'm going to talk about that are related to or connected to the SEND review. So with that, let me just step you through these 4 things very quickly, and just give you a little bit of a picture of what we've been doing and what we think is going to be happening over the coming year, just to lay the foundations for the review that this conference does, but also projecting forward. So supporting the recovery from COVID. I won't reiterate some of the things that you've been doing and some of the work the NNPCF has done, but we have definitely been heard, and we've definitely made an impact And it's really, really simple things. If anybody ever asks you for something that the Parent Care Reform movement's done at a national level, well, we are absolutely instrumental in getting written into the guidance for catch-up funding that it could and should be used holistically and can be used for things such as therapy services. We did that. And we know that that money is being used to support things such as speech and language therapy. Where we are at the moment, the work on COVID continues at a great pace. We're a part of many boards that are linked to COVID. Indeed, we did a very quick flash survey last week, and we'll be able to give you an update from the Vulnerable Children's Board that we attended last week on that. So we continue to be heard on that. But the challenges with COVID haven't gone away. And we posted something on our website last week that spoke to things such as the anxiety and mental health issues, low attendance at school for SEND children, difficulties in accessing therapies and services, and the emerging harms, the damage that we know has been done to families, the children through the last year. And we're working very closely with things, with organisations like the Disabled Children's Partnership to make sure that those aren't forgotten and continue to be addressed. The NHS long-term plan. Now, many of you will have seen a lot of activity on this, really in following the summer, over the summer. The NHS really kicked in with the long-term plan, and in particular, we've been working very closely with the SEND work stream and the learning disability and autism work stream and the long-term plan. And many of you will be aware of projects that we've been working on, such as key working, admissions avoidance, and the autism in schools project at a regional and local level. So thank you for all of your efforts on those. And going forward, a lot of these projects that I mentioned there have been piloted or they've been done as a proof of concept. We're now working very closely with the NHS national teams to roll those out nationally to make sure that every area has access to some of the work around, for example, the autism in schools and key working. And that's going to be really the agenda for the next 2 years, working with the NHS and the long-term plan. Improving accountability in the SEND system. I think the big achievement, the big thing looking backwards has been the continuation, the extension of what was a limited time trial for the tribunal to be able to make non-binding judgments on social care and health services. That trial is now finished and those powers have been extended. So that's great. And that's something that we worked very closely with many other organisations on. Local area inspections have resumed, and we anticipate, again, COVID planning notwithstanding, that they will, the inspectorates, the Joint Inspectorate will get around and will conclude the first round of local area inspections, just sweeping up those last few local authority areas that haven't been inspected yet. But we are already working very closely with Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission around what the next round of inspections will look like. And we'll come out to you and talk to you a little bit more about that at the right time. The broad theme is the first round of inspections are really about the implementation of the SEND reforms. The next round is going to be very much more looking at the impact, what outcomes have come from the work that local areas have been doing with children and young people in SEND, with SEND, and how are they changing those outcomes. The last main topic of area is the SEND review. Now, we've been quite transparent on this and said actually the SEND review has been delayed a number of times. It was launched over 2 years ago now, and we've been quite clear and fed back to the Department for Education that actually the communication, particularly over the last year around what the SEND review has been up to, has been poor. We haven't kept stakeholders, including parent care forums, up to speed on where we are. The last sort of major communication prior to the recent letter from Minister Quince was probably our conference in March, where the SEND review team came and presented to us. Where we are now is that the SEND review has resumed with a gusto. and both Tina and myself, Tina Emery, the other NNPCF co-chair, and myself actually sit on the Send Review steering group, and we are starting to see some policy ideas emerging, which we'll keep you updated on. But linked to that, I think there's also a couple of big things out there, which is the Children's Social Care Review and the Schools White Paper, which we've not said a great deal about so far, but I think is going to be very important for children with SEND. And all of these things that I've spoken about are, of course, all connected. They all interrelate, and we're working desperately hard to make sure that we draw those connections. And of course, let's not forget COVID underpins a lot of what we're doing, the environment that we're operating in at the moment. We can't get away from that at the moment. So the next year is going to be absolutely critical. It's going to be critical for children and young people with SEND and their families. It's going to be critical for parent carer forums, and it's going to be critical for the future of what the landscape, the policy and services landscape looks like for children and young people with the SEND. And we're all here to say that actually we think that the Parent Carer Forum movement and the NNPCF and organisations like the Disabled Children Partnership and Contact have a key role to play in shaping that future. So I know we keep asking this of you, but we're going to need that energy, that enthusiasm, that knowledge, that passion that you all bring to make sure that our voices are heard and that we shape the future in the most effective way for our children and young people. Thank you. That pretty much concludes what I wanted to say, and I think with that I'll just hand back to Carolyn to close off this section and launch you into the conference proper.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Mrunal. And thank you, Kate, for that. I just wanted to remind everyone, after every session that you attend this week, you will receive an invitation to give feedback around the sessions, and it'll just be a short survey, monkey survey. If everyone could complete those after each session, we'd be really grateful, because it helps us to frame any future sessions and conferences. And really just wanted to say, I hope that you enjoy the week and that you all take away something useful to your areas afterwards. So thank you once again, and we'll be seeing more of you this week. Take care, everyone.